Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Killjoys. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break them down. Well, first and foremost, let's start with the whole situation of what's going down in the prison. First and foremost, the whole thing of Dutch's plan of like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. It's like, well, yeah, but first and foremost, how are three of us going to take over an entire prison, which Dutch has got to work through that. And then Davin also brings up, what about the whole Johnny situation? And it's like, Dutch is kind of like, yep, one, crisis at a time. Well, basically, there's basically a prisoner fight that's being held. Basically, some Crash Royals have come down to basically like, oh yeah, like this is kind of their thing from time to time. And I love the entire episode. Davin's like, of course you're going to pick me because, it's like, I've got, experienced prison fights and stuff like that. My record kind of show. So it's like, yeah, as the sister got close, and he was like, here we go. And she's running through his file, and she's like, no thanks. And he's like, wait, what? And he's like, excuse me, what? And then later on when his number gets called, he's like, all right, time for this. And he rips off his top shirt. She's like, you're not going for the fights. And he's like, what do you, oh, come on. I love that he was so hurt by that fact. Is like he thought he was so in it for the fights and stuff like that. And it makes sense, but I love that. I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, this episode does a lot of that subverting your expectations type of thing. Part of me was almost halfway expecting them for whatever reason to pick Johnny just for the hell of it or something like that. I thought that might be like the twist that they were going with, but turns out not to be the case. Hell, they didn't even go with Dutch. Dutch had to kind of show off to the brother Silas what she was capable of before he could let her fight. Obviously, she kind of had to show off in front of the warden, which the warden kind of didn't like that. But obviously, the warden kind of has an issue with this whole thing. I actually kind of like it when the grand scheme of things, the warden actually wants Dutch to win, because for her, it's like, she's a very like, hey, this is my territory. She doesn't like people encroaching on it. And so for her, it's like the Creshies get embarrassed very easily. And it's actually kind of interesting. Like this whole tournament is meant to be a situation where they can keep their champion at the top. Because basically if you win, you kind of get a pardon from the prison, but also, you win by like also taking down a champion, and you have a chance of going off and becoming their new champion for like their family or whatever, kind of like joining the family's guard or whatever. But I thought it was interesting. Basically, the whole point in the tournament is to wear down anyone that could even potentially go up against the Crushy champion, just because they want the fighters to be at a disadvantage. Because once you make it through basically the gauntlet, you'll be so worn down and tired that by the time it comes down to you fighting the champion, you're at a major disadvantage no matter how good of a fighter you are. But Dutch does a great job of just like ripping through everyone. I love the first dude because obviously he needs the chip in his neck and ends up going for it and rips it out. And I love Corin being like, wait, what? No, come on, that's not fair. We got to get a rematch. No, we want a rematch. And the fighter is on the ground. He's bleeding from his neck. He's like, no rematch. And Corin gets pissed. He's calling him a coward and everything. It's like, got such a problem, why don't you enter the ring? Obviously, you can't. But obviously, I just thought that was the funny thing. So there's that. I mean, this all kind of ties into the whole Johnny and Dutch thing, too, because it's like, oh, yeah, here's the chip. The chip's in this area. And so he's about to touch Dutch's neck to show her where it is, but he kind of gets nervous. He's like, okay, never mind. It's not. I mean, it's there. You can figure it out for yourself. And she's like, are we going to talk about it? He's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, what happened to us? Like, the fact of the matter is, like, for her, it's like, what we went through was fake. I know it's affecting you because Davin told me. He's like, Davin shouldn't have told you. She's like, right, he shouldn't have. You should have been the one to tell me. She's like, basically, I need your head in the game. He's like, so what are you trying to say that? Basically, when have I never had your back? She's like, I'm not trying to say you don't have my back. He's like, it sounds an awful lot like that, And it's a whole complicated thing, because I think it's neat that it isn't just Johnny that's affected by this. Also, Dutch is too, because no matter how awkward it is for Johnny, it's awkward for Dutch too, because she can read the room. I think it's not until Davin told her that she really realized that things are different. Johnny just put up a good front to pretend like they weren't. It's kind of interesting because I kind of tied this back to like a comment I got like when it came to like the season 4 finale review. Someone was worried that like this whole alternate reality type of thing, they figured it would be done within an episode or two, which technically it's not. It's still an ongoing thing, potentially throughout a good chunk of the rest of the season as well, until they fix everything on Westerly. But the whole point is like, I figured there might be lasting effects from it, and turns out there are. Like, and I think it's such a good choice that they made too. Like, it ruins the dynamic between Dutch and Johnny. It makes it awkward because it's like, yeah, because they have this very strong bond and relationship, but they've never had this relationship before, so it's throwing them off. Especially Johnny, because it might not have been real, but it felt real, and that's the most messed up thing about this whole circumstance, you know? Because it isn't just something like, the fact is that the thing that was left over, the ramifications for like this alternate life they were leading, is it led to some like personal challenges that Dutch and Johnny have to go through. And the reason why it's affecting Dutch so much is because for her, Johnny's always been her rock for the longest time, ever since, because she's always been who Klein wanted her to be, that he trained her to be. And the fact of the matter is, she thought she could kind of get away from it, but all it took was another monster popping up, in this case the lady, putting her in another cage, and it kind of just pushed her back to who she was to a certain extent. You know what I'm trying to say? Because it's like to basically undo everything in her life, that the fact of the matter is, like, Johnny was her foundation. He was like the first one outside of everything related to Klein. That was the first thing that she's latched onto, the first person she had that she could latch onto. So Johnny's been by her side for all these years, so he's her rock, he's her foundation, and that foundation has crumbled now because of what the lady did. She kind of screwed everything up. Now, was that the intention? Not really sure, but you kind of think maybe it was, because the lady knows how important Johnny is to Dutch, that Johnny is her weakness. So, of course, so that's why I feel like in that particular case, there was a little bit more thought put into it. Because I do like that Klein's joking and making fun of the lady because she made a mistake. It's like, well, you kind of made this whole circumstance kind of came about because you made a mistake and made Pre the head of the rack, so because of that, everything kind of ended up playing out the way that it did. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Which there's that whole situation to kind of talk about as well, about them sitting and waiting for Pre to show up at the bar, because obviously it's someone very important to him. And so there's also the circumstance. It's just a small detail I thought was kind of neat, that you see people kind of being sick and stuff like that. And even Klein is like, yeah, because you're terraforming this place, you're making it very hard for your workers to exist. But for her, it's like all the plans moving and coming to an end soon enough, so she's not going to need those workers anyway, because obviously the planet is supposed to be terraformed to fit, to be more hospitable to her and her children, her people. So of course, but obviously it was by the time the job's done, I won't need them anymore, so let them get sick, and I don't care. So it's just interesting, that little detail of oh yeah, you're seeing that it is starting to have its effect on people in general, the terraforming, but nevertheless they're sitting there waiting. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I find it fascinating that Klein is teaching the lady so much about love, because the thing is, she knows so little about humans. So the point, I'm curious, is he trying to teach her so much about humans so that basically, what are we going to deal with the lady type of situation? Is it going to be a straight up, oh, she's going to die type of situation, or are we going to change her heart? I feel like we're leaning more towards the whole killing her thing, but I just think it's kind of interesting that I guess it's kind of supposed to be getting her closer and closer to, because obviously they want to mimic humans because of the whole memory connection thing. But I think the whole point is he's trying to push her closer and closer to a human, because once you add in those human emotions and stuff like that, it's going to catch her off guard. So I think it's supposed to represent a double-edged sword, understanding us more, so it can help you and your people continue and exist. But the fact is, it's also going to be potentially your undoing. He even gives her this particular drink, and she drinks it, and she smiles. It's there, the host you're in, smile, and and the lady's like, wait, what was that? What did you do? It's this drink is nostalgic. Essentially, it reminds your host of home. It reminds them of the parents that love them. That basically, the importance of love is kind of furthering that human connection aspect to it, that that kind of drives a lot of human love. But I even love the fact is Garrett's there, and obviously he's not trying to let on about anything, so he walks past Garrett pretending he's going after the dude named Carl, and he's telling Garrett, Pre's in trouble, get out of here. And he grabs Carl, is asking him for questions. He's honestly, I'm not lying to you. Okay, yes, I am. I knew I shouldn't have this drink because it kind of messes with my stomach, but I don't know how long I could keep the portal closed. And he, Klein sends him on his way. So I love that. It's but the lady took lessons from what Klein had said, and it's like, no, you were hoping I wouldn't understand, but I do. The whole how important love is for people. So it's like, the fact of the matter is, I know you're lying to me. You're manipulating me. You're pushing me to be in a position where you can give Dutch more time, Yelena, more time. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't find me pre, your daughter is going to burn, basically. So he goes to Garrett at the end, and I love that whole speech that he gives, that, you know, whether it be the people that, you know, what was the words exactly? I don't want to butcher. Basically, he had said that the world is a dangerous place. There's enemies everywhere doing us harm, but what keeps us safe? Not laws, not strength. It's what we do for each other, whether it be the people we love, the people we cross paths with. That's the most important thing, because that's what makes us human, you know. So I just thought that was kind of a beautiful speech. And even Garrett being like, I don't understand what that's about, who you are. He's like, the fact of the matter, if it's about saving Pre, he's basically like, Garrett, you need to wake up, which I'm very interested to see how you're going to go about doing that, because he's probably going to have to, because it's intense emotions that help that. So all he has to do is push him to remember Pre. Obviously, Zeph got an easier method of doing that when it comes to helping herself remember, as well as Pre in turn last episode. But obviously, like, you know, when it came to Dutch, all it took was strong emotions. I mean, beforehand, she was able to kind of reach Pre, Davin, and Johnny by doing that as well. They ran out into the rain before everything could kind of set in. So I'm very interested to see where things kind of go, especially because Klein's going to have to balance that out by trying to help with the resistance while also keeping the lady busy, while also keeping Dutch safe. He's playing a very delicate balancing game in this moment, trying to do too much, not trying to do too much, but trying not to do too little as well. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where things going to go on that front. But circling back to the prison, there's a whole situation of, like I said, Dutch doing her fighting thing, running through the gauntlet, kicking ass. I love that one dude, she ends up like kind of kicking, and he ends up doing a flip and landing because she kicked him so hard. It's like Dutch is running through the gauntlet, but like I said, you could tell she was kind of getting worn down. But it's like, yo, it's Dutch. She's going to kick ass, you know? At the same time, I'd actually forgot to talk about this earlier, but that whole conversation that Dutch had with Davin about, you know, kind of losing Johnny because of what the lady did to them. It's like, but Davin was like, you don't know what to say to Johnny anymore? Say that to him, you know? Because at first she's like going to win this fight and everything, like, because she was getting Warden to go, hey, you can let Johnny go. Obviously wanting to let Johnny go so he can go tell Zeph what's up, their plan and everything, but also at the same time to give him space. And it's like, is that what Johnny wants or is that what you want? But it's like, this is what you need to tell Johnny to let him understand what's going on, you know? And obviously Johnny's kind of going through enough already too, because it's like, not only is there the whole complicated Dutch thing, but there's also the Lucy thing, which that's kind of coming back, you know, like the whole thing with Lucy where it's like, oh, you know, having fun. She's like, I have no memories of like fun or whatever. He's like, come on, just guess what this thing in my neck is. And she did. And he's like, oh. And she's like, yes, that was actually fun. And it's like, oh, you got that virus ready that I had you work on? And she's like, is this for illegal purposes? He's like, no. And she's like, okay, you did. And the virus is ready. And he's like, yeah, it's for both legal and illegal means. I even love it later when he's in solitary confinement. He's like, yeah, this would be so much easier if you had, you know, if he had Lucy to talk to. And it's like, well, not Lucy, Nucy. So I just thought that was kind of a nice element to it. Sadly, their plan getting found out, and, you know, Johnny getting locked up and the warden threatening, because I thought something was going to happen, because like it was interesting because the warden was like, you know, but if you kind of screw me over in any shape or form, like you don't want me as an enemy, basically. I was like, because like I said, there were so many points where it's kind of like there were so many like things went in a different direction, because you thought everything was going to go down flawlessly. So that's where I thought. And I was like, oh, that's so fascinating. And then it's like, oh no, she figures everything out. And basically like, oh, you're out of the fight. Davin, I'm going to send him off with the Creshies. And then the fact is Johnny's going to stay in solitary confinement. And I'm going to send you basically to the deepest, darkest pit type of situation. It's like, geez, I wasn't expecting it. I kind of thought everything would kind of go off without a hitch. But then it's like, there's like, because basically the siblings, she came to Davin, and Davin was like, I'm not in this for the weird sex stuff or just sex stuff. And she's like, I'm not coming to you for that. It was like, well, good, because I wasn't, you know, offering it in the first place. Apparently, it's like, I want you to kill my brother. And it's like, he's like, I'm not a killer, but for her, it's like, Which, to me, this is some nice world building type of stuff and kind of understanding where everything stands, especially on Crash. It's actually kind of interesting because I didn't even think about that. We haven't been to the other places at all this season. We haven't been to Leith. We haven't been to Crash at all. Because I was curious about, because that came up last episode, because Turin was like, yeah, like no one else in the quad is coming to help us, especially like Crash, because they're letting whatever's happening on Westerly go down because they don't care, because they can always replace their workforce later on. Which is like, once again, what happens on Westerly is going to affect them, but obviously because they don't care enough to look into what's really going on, they're, because eventually the lady's going to come and squash all of you as well, because she's probably going to make Crash into a planet much like Westerly, where it's inhabitable for all. She'll probably, take over the entire quad and then spread out past the J cluster, that type of situation. Maybe that's just me thinking beyond that, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't even think about it, and I was like, right, we haven't been off Westerly at all this season. Well, we have, but obviously you get what I'm trying to say. Nevertheless, I thought that was just kind of interesting where the sister was saying that basically on Crash, because of the whole Westerly situation, like, there's already like a power struggle amongst like the families and stuff like that. Plus there's a low food supply and stuff like that, which I think is so interesting. It's almost like ironic, because you're leaving Westerly to fend for itself, basically. You're like, because they're under the impression like, oh, we can replace our workforce, but you doing that, in fact, has kind of screwed you over because you have no food and you're not benefiting from everything that went down on Westerly. Like, you rely so heavily on what goes down in Westerly because they don't, basically, that's where all their, obviously their food and their workforce comes from. Without that, they're kind of stuck to their own vices, and I guess finding replacements for what Westerly does for you hasn't been the easiest thing. So I just think it's kind of interesting, like, because you decide to stay in the sidelines through all of this, because once again, I think it's a conversation I brought up last episode too. It's like, let's not forget the Holland were welcomed, like, obviously they were here anyway, but obviously like the 9 on Crash led to that situation happening because they made a deal with the Holland long time ago. So once again, this all kind of stems from being their fault in the first place. But nevertheless, I just thought that was kind of interesting, like little details. I was like, oh man, that's kind of nice. It's kind of like your need to kind of throw Westerly under the bus kind of ends up ultimately kind of being your own undoing to a certain extent. But obviously, Davin was kind of against like killing anyone, but she was like, don't do it to kind of you don't have to kill anyone, just save my life, which Davin agrees to it later on just so that he can buy Dutch time to kind of do what she needs to do, plus they bring Sparlow into this whole situation. And then it comes down to it, Dutch is in the fight. I was like, dude, this is about to get nuts. And, I was like, oh, man, this sucks. Because obviously Dutch's mind isn't in the game because she's thinking about Johnny and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, man, this isn't going to be good. I was like, at first she's probably going to lose, but then she'll come back in the end type of situation. But I was like, oh, things are about to get nuts. And bullet to his head. I'm like, wait, what? Subverting expectations. I thought we were about to have a big old brawl. It's like, nope, he's dead. Because it turns out Corin and Sparlow are working together. I was like, jeez, didn't expect that hard twist, because it looked like they hated each other, but I wonder, was that kind of the plan from the beginning? Probably not. It's probably a situation, because when they looked at each other, I guess he thought, hey, this is an opportunity. Why don't we put our differences aside and join forces and take advantage of the situation so we can take over the prison ourselves? I was like, holy shit. At the same time, like, we see Johnny, he ends up running into the warden, which they're going to probably be working together to save Dutch and Davin so that they can, get back control of the prison ship and stuff like that. Because it was even something that Davin had said, it's like, you don't even try to, like, halfway fight this battle just to give Johnny more time. It's like, no, win this fight, because look at all these prisoners that are kind of supporting us now. If we win this fight, they will be our army. So that's something to kind of think about. Because I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to appreciate the fact that Sparlow electrocuted him. Like, Corin was a part of it and everything too. It's like, except for like, obviously the people that are on their side, but everyone else that got electrocuted, I'm sure they're going to be all for like Dutch, Davin, and Johnny. Maybe not. We'll see. It's kind of interesting when you actually break it down and think about it. Like, Dutch constantly walks away with a large army each time. Sadly, that army kind of gets dismantled every time. But nevertheless, there's that whole situation. And then there's the whole Jax and Delsea situation where, because I love the whole thing of like Jack being like, okay, so, did my mom not want me or something? It's like, Anila, of course she did, just, but then it's like, well, what are we? And basically they'll say, it's like, well, when an evil man puts a baby in a woman, the fact of the matter, she makes a promise to protect the baby, so that's why I'm basically here. And so obviously Jack has, a vision of like, wait, my dad's in trouble. Like he knows, using his powers and whatnot. But Dulcea wants him to focus more on, basically you got too much of an important job to do, because basically for Dulcea she lost so much in the grand scheme of things. I thought that was kind of a beautiful moment, because obviously it's all in her head, but because she was dreaming, she ends up talking to Davin. I think that speaks volumes that the person that would pop up in your head would be Davin and not Anila, but I guess it makes sense because Davin is, this is all, the whole conversation is about Davin in the first place. I thought it was kind of sad when basically it's like, you have a job to do, so do it. And then Jack was like, that's why I wish you were the one that was lost in the green. It's like, oh, Jesus, that was super fucking harsh for you to say. But, especially saying that, considering the fact is the person that was lost in the green is the woman she loves, so that makes what you say even shittier. But at the same time, it's like, that's your mom. And the whole, because she wasn't acting like a mom, it's like, and for her, it's almost interesting because you can almost make the argument Dulcea just stepped into like, oh, what it's like to be a parent, when your kid at one point in their life becomes a teenager and they're so rebellious that they kind of hate you, that whole thing. So it's like she's stepping in that realm of things. But Davin was there telling her, it's like, no, you're doing okay. But for her, it's like, she lost so much. She had her position as one of the 9 on Crest, so her royalty, her immortality as a whole is gone, and now the woman she loves, Anila, is gone. Like, she's kind of lost so much. So this hasn't been the best time for her, but it's like, you don't need to make Jack like you. He doesn't need to be cold like you, because essentially it's like people without emotions are basically going to end up all alone. It's kind of like the point he was making, and they're going to deserve it. You don't need Jack to be like you to survive. He just needs you to be there for him, And she's there to kind of talk to him. And I love that, like, heart to heart she has. Like, I talk about, I might have brought this up in previous seasons, but, especially this being the final season, to say it, like, Dulcea turned it around for me. Like, when she first pops up, you remember early days, season 1, season 2, Dulcea, she was an asshole. Because once again, let's not forget, she killed Potter. Even in season 3, she was borderline an asshole, but at the same time, it's like, you really start, all right, Dulcea, you're winning me over. Season 4, she completely wins you over, and it's like, I just love the progression that's a beautiful progression of that character to kind of become likable. She was like, probably like, and from the point of like, you're like, ooh, you're such a good villain because I hate you. I think a good villain makes you feel like that you don't like them. But like I said, she turned it around and she's like, oh, you're a villain that I'm starting to really like, because they're making you have like these comedic moments and stuff like that. She had them in the earlier seasons, but especially playing with the fact is that she's turning into a good person kind of really helped that along, But nevertheless, for her, it's like, she never wanted Jack, because for her, she had all she ever wanted in her life. She was fulfilled and she was fine. With the current circumstances, she's fine now too, but if anything ever happened to Jack, she wouldn't be fine, because no matter what, even if Anila isn't here, you're still my child. I am still your mother. And the fact of the matter is, nothing's ever going to change. I was like, the feels, Dulcea, you tapping into your emotions. And she's crying. He's like, queens don't cry, right? And she's like, well, this one does, because if you don't know, I'm a teeny bit broken. It's like, oh, dude, dude, I can't help it. I just like, dude, her being all to be fair, she hasn't had her emotions for a while, because she went without her emotions all of season 3. Obviously in season 4 it came back after she got reversed as being a Holland and everything. But nevertheless, I just thought that was pretty neat. And then it's like, okay, they found the cube and everything. It's like, you only can see it when you're ready to see it. And he says a line that I thought was interesting. He was like, promise me you'll still help look for my dad. I was like, why is he saying that? And it opens up the cube. Who's in it other than Anila? I was like, because they were like, oh, what's going to be in it? Is it going to be a weapon? And it's like, Anila. That's why he made that statement, because it's like, now that you have her back, please don't make it so that you don't go looking for my dad. So I was like, oh, but that's what he meant by that. And it's like, oh my God, family reunion, because not only did it's like Dulcea gets Anila back, but at the same time it's like Jack gets to meet his other mother now. It's like, I'm waiting for this, because they like, by the time Anila popped out of the green at the end of the season, obviously Jack was already away, so he never got to really meet her and get to know her. I'm interested to see this. Oh, dude, I can't wait for the end. Hopefully everything works out very positively where this whole dysfunctional family gets to be together. I can't wait. It's like Auntie Dutch, who looks like Mama Anila, and it's a whole complicated thing. Like, they kind of ran through that last season, but I'm so interested to really dive into that dynamic. But that begs the question, like, has Anila been in there the entire time, like, since Klein and her got out the green, did he hide her away? Was that the whole point? Because, like, once again, if it wasn't her, who brought the dagger? Was it Klein himself? Did he actually bring the dagger to death? But it's like, no, he was under her watch the entire time. So he had to have gotten not unless there's actually someone else who's actually awake, who's pretending not to be awake. Not unless we get a twist like that. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, who else could it be? Because I'm like I said, not unless Anila went into the cube later on. Maybe the whole point was like for it to be open so that it's like, oh, she knows if it's open, that means it's time for me to come out. Or maybe she was told after she delivers the dagger to stash herself inside the cube, or maybe Klein did, which is interesting because obviously that goes back to like earlier stuff between Klein and Anila, the whole cube situation. Nevertheless, I was like, holy crap. I'm so excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. We got Anila officially back on the board. I'm not surprised. I've had a feeling she was out of the green just because, let's not forget, once again, Klein was there with her at the end of season 4 as the green was collapsing. So I knew it, but still, I'm curious to find out her side of things. Like, are we going to find out like what she's been up to and whatnot? Either way, I'm very excited to see what the next episode is all about. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.